What if the characters from Bridgerton suddenly lived in the modern world? No debutante seasons, nor carriage rides through Mayfair. Instead, think boardrooms, social media, global companies, and the constant pressure of modern success. The personalities, though, would still feel exactly the same, because Bridgerton has always been less about the time period and more about people. But if these characters existed today, what kind of lives would they build? Let's start with Anthony Bridgerton. Anthony has always been someone who leads whether he wants to or not. The responsibility landed on him early, and ever since then, he has moved through life like the person who has to keep everything together. In the modern world, that energy almost automatically places him at the top of a massive institution. Anthony would absolutely be a CEO, possibly the kind of hedge fund manager who runs an enormous financial empire and makes decisions that affect entire markets. The kind of person whose schedule is impossible, whose phone never stops ringing, and whose reputation alone carries serious weight. We can all imagine Anthony sitting at the head of a company with thousands of employees depending on him, while investors watch every move and competitors wait for mistakes. But Anthony's story only becomes more interesting when one specific person enters the picture: Kate Sharma. If Anthony dominates the corporate world, Kate is the person who walks into the room and instantly understands how the entire system works. In the modern world, she would almost certainly become a top corporate lawyer or high-level strategist, the kind of professional companies hire when the situation is complicated and losing simply isn't an option. Kate is disciplined, analytical, and extremely hard to intimidate. She studies people carefully, reads the power dynamics in the room, and knows exactly when to challenge someone. This is where their dynamic becomes fascinating to watch. Anthony runs institutions, Kate wins battles inside them, and when those two personalities collide, every conversation becomes sharper, every decision more intense. But on the other hand, Daphne Bridgerton moves into a completely different kind of influence. Daphne has always understood how social spaces operate. She reads people quickly, she knows how to present herself, and she understands the invisible rules that shape reputation. In today's world, Daphne would almost certainly become a luxury lifestyle influencer or relationship expert, the kind of online personality who hosts elegant events, collaborates with high-end brands, and builds an enormous audience around her image. Daphne's real advantage is emotional intelligence. She understands how people think. She even notices tension before anyone else does. That's exactly why she would thrive in a modern world built around social visibility. Because influence today is about understanding the room, the audience, and the timing of every move. After Daphne, we have Simon Bassett. Simon has always operated slightly outside the system. Wealthy, independent, and completely uninterested in following expectations just because society says he should. In the modern world, that personality fits perfectly into the tech industry. Simon would most likely become a tech entrepreneur or venture capitalist, the kind of person who builds a company from scratch, disrupts an entire industry, and suddenly finds himself controlling enormous wealth. But the modern world would not only belong to power players and corporate strategists. Some Bridgerton characters were never meant to follow the traditional path in the first place, and the next one might actually be the clearest example of that: Benedict Bridgerton. Even in the world of the Ton, Benedict always moved slightly outside the structure everyone else accepted. He questions traditions most people never think to challenge. So if Benedict lived today, the path would almost certainly lead toward creativity. Contemporary art, fashion design, maybe even a mix of both. The kind of career where reputation grows through originality rather than status. Picture Benedict in the modern world for a moment. A studio filled with sketches, unfinished pieces, fabrics, paint, and ideas that constantly evolve. His name is circulating in artistic circles, exhibitions that attract attention, because his work refuses to look like anyone else's. And what makes this fit so well is something fans of the show already recognize. Benedict isn't chasing approval from society either. What he wants is something much harder to define: authenticity. Similarly, Colin Bridgerton has always had a restless curiosity about the world beyond his immediate surroundings. While others in his family stay anchored to responsibility or social expectations, Colin keeps moving and looking for something that feels meaningful. In the modern world, that instinct would translate beautifully into a global media presence. Colin would almost certainly become a travel vlogger or documentary creator. Imagine Colin visiting cities across the world, filming cultures, landscapes, and conversations with people whose lives are completely different from his own. Millions of viewers following along as he documents places most people only dream of seeing. Colin genuinely enjoys people, and that warmth is exactly what would turn casual viewers into loyal followers. Because modern audiences are drawn to creators who feel authentic, and Colin has always had that quality without trying. But while Colin travels across the world sharing stories with millions of viewers, one person has been observing everything much more quietly: Penelope Featherington. If Penelope lived in the modern world, the scale of her influence would be enormous. Because the skill she has always possessed is information, watching people, understanding their dynamics, and knowing exactly when a piece of information can shift the entire conversation. In the 21st century, that ability would translate perfectly into digital media power. Penelope would almost certainly run a major online platform, a gossip network, a media company, maybe even a cultural commentary empire that shapes how millions of people understand celebrity, politics, and reputation. And viewers already know how effective she would be. Penelope understands narratives. She sees patterns in social behavior that other characters completely overlook. In other words, Lady Whistledown would not disappear in the modern world. She would simply move online. Next is Eloise Bridgerton. Eloise has never been comfortable with quiet obedience. From the beginning, she questioned the systems surrounding her, asking why certain traditions exist and who they actually benefit. Placed in the modern world, Eloise would almost certainly find her voice through journalism, podcasting, or social activism. The kind of commentator who speaks openly about inequality, outdated traditions, and the pressure placed on women to follow roles they never chose. Her audience would follow her for honesty. Because Eloise does something many people hesitate to do. She says what everyone else is thinking. But the next character moves in the opposite direction entirely. Francesca Bridgerton. While many members of the Bridgerton family seek visibility, Francesca has always found strength in quiet focus. She observes more than she speaks. She processes emotions privately before revealing them to the world. That personality fits beautifully into the life of a classical musician and someone whose work speaks through music rather than public performance. Her career might grow slowly, almost quietly at first, but those who discover her work would immediately recognize something powerful in it, because Francesca's emotional depth has always been one of her most defining traits. And music has a way of translating emotions that words sometimes struggle to express. But the modern Bridgerton world would not be complete without the people who actually control the room. And this is where Queen Charlotte enters the story. If Charlotte lived today, she would not simply be famous. She would be powerful, the kind of global figure who moves between politics, media, and elite society with complete authority. Imagine someone who dominates international events, whose opinion can influence political conversations, cultural trends, and public narratives all at once. Charlotte has always understood spectacle, the grand entrances, the dramatic statements, the ability to make every person in the room immediately pay attention. She would host the most exclusive gatherings, shape elite circles, and quietly remind everyone exactly who still controls the game. But behind every visible power figure, there is often someone even more dangerous. And in this case, it is Lady Danbury. Lady Danbury sees the system clearly and understands exactly how to move inside it. That's why Lady Danbury would almost certainly become a political strategist or power broker. The kind of person whose name rarely appears in headlines, but whose influence shapes decisions made at the very top. Think of the advisor that powerful leaders trust when the stakes are high, or the person who reads people instantly and understands alliances. Lady Danbury has always played that role inside the ton. She guides people, opens doors, and occasionally closes them when someone proves they cannot be trusted. And the fascinating part is that most people don't even realize how much influence she has until the outcome has already been decided. But the Bridgerton world has always revolved around more than power and strategy. At its center is family, which brings us to Violet Bridgerton. In the modern world, Violet would almost certainly become the person everyone turns to when relationships begin to fall apart. A respected family counselor, or perhaps the host of a high society social network where connections quietly shape people's lives. Friends would ask for her advice. Families would trust her judgment. Violet has always believed in love, but more importantly, she understands people. She sees the emotional cracks long before anyone else admits they exist. But the next story might actually be the most inspiring one in this modern version of Bridgerton. Sophie Beckett. Sophie's journey has always been about resilience. She begins life in a position where the system seems designed to keep her invisible, yet she keeps moving forward anyway. In the modern world, that determination would almost certainly lead her toward entrepreneurship. Sophie would build something for herself from the ground up. A company, a brand, maybe even a business that grows precisely because she understands what it means to start with nothing. People would admire her success story, but what makes it powerful is the path behind it. Sophie would never forget where she came from. And that kind of story resonates with people everywhere, because success feels different when someone had to fight for every inch of it. So yes, if Bridgerton existed in the modern world, the titles and ballrooms might disappear, but the personalities would remain exactly the same. Their world may be built around Regency society, but the real story has always been about ambition, loyalty, and love. And honestly, all of those things exist in every century.